Human Life and Problems by K.C. Dhammananda. Human Life and Problems. As human beings, we have achieved a level of material progress we would not have even dreamed of barely a century ago. The marvels of modern technology have given us enormous power over the forces of nature. We have conquered many disasters, but the ultimate question is, are we happier than our ancestors were in the past? The answer is no. The abuse of women, children, and the underprivileged, religious and racial discrimination, color bar and caste distinction continue on unabated. Perhaps those who enjoy material comforts suffer even more acutely than their poor fellow beings. Mental illnesses, stress and loneliness are some of the serious problems we now face in our modern society. But the vital question is, who is responsible for all the evils that haunt the world today? There are many who are quite eager to take credit for the progress that mankind has achieved. Religionists, scientists, politicians, and economists are all quick to claim that humanity is indebted to them for progress. But who must share the blame? I believe that everyone is equally responsible. Let us turn the spotlight on ourselves and ask ourselves to declare in all honesty if we also have been responsible for failing to bring peace and happiness to our fellow beings. All of us are responsible for some of the horrors taking place in our midst today, because we are too afraid to tell the truth. Let us take, for example, the exploitation of man's desire for sensual gratification. Greed for money and power has led some unscrupulous people to develop a multi-million-dollar industry, to providing sensual pleasures in every possible way, and young children are being trapped and victimized in the process. Never before in the history of the world has the human race been in such great need to be free from conflict, ill-feeling, selfishness, deceit, and strife. We are in dire need of peace, not only in our personal life at home and work, but also at the global level. The tension, anxiety, and fear arising from the conflict are not only disruptive, but continue to exert a constant drain on our well-being, mentally and physically. In their desire to completely dominate everything around them, humans have become the most violent beings in this world. They have succeeded to some extent, but in doing so have paid a terrible price. They have sacrificed peace of mind for material comfort and power. The basic problem we face today is moral degeneration and misused intelligence. In spite of all the advances made by science and technology, the world is far from being safe and peaceful. Science and technology have indeed made human life more insecure than ever before. If there is no spiritual improvement in the way we handle our problems, then humanity itself is in danger of being wiped out. Going beyond worldly pleasures. The religions of the world have always maintained that human happiness does not depend merely upon the satisfaction of physical appetites and passions, or upon the acquisition of material wealth and power. Even if we have all the worldly pleasures, we still cannot be happy and peaceful if our minds are constantly obsessed with anxiety and hatred arising from ignorance with regard to the true nature of existence. Genuine happiness cannot be defined solely in terms of wealth, power, children, fame, or inventions. These no doubt bring some temporary physical and mental comfort, but they cannot provide lasting happiness in the ultimate sense. This is particularly true when possessions are unjustly acquired or obtained through misappropriation. They become a source of pain, guilt, and sorrow rather than bring happiness to the possessor. Too often we are made to believe that pleasing the five senses can guarantee happiness. Fascinating sights, enchanting music, fragrant scents, delicious tastes, and enticing body contacts mislead and deceive us, only to make us slaves to worldly pleasure. While no one will deny that there is momentary happiness in the anticipation of pleasure as well as during the gratification of the senses, such pleasures are fleeting. When one views these pleasures objectively, one will truly understand the fleeting and unsatisfactory nature of such pleasures. One will thus gain a better understanding of reality, what this existence really means, and how true happiness can be gained. We can develop and maintain inner peace only by turning our thoughts inwards instead of outwards. We must be aware of the dangers and pitfalls of the destructive forces of greed, hatred, and delusion. We must learn to cultivate and sustain the benevolent forces of kindness, love, and harmony. The battleground is within us and is not fought with weapons or with any other sources, but only with our mental awareness of all the negative and positive forces within our minds. Mindfulness makes a fool man. A fool man speaks with an open mind. And like a parachute, the mind works better when it is fully opened. This awareness is the key to unlock the door from which conflict and strife, as well as wholesome thoughts, emerge. The mind is the ultimate source of all happiness and misery. For there to be happiness in the world, the mind of an individual must first be at peace and happy. Individual happiness is conducive to the happiness of society, while the happiness of society means happiness of the nation. It is on the happiness of nations that the happiness of this world is built. Here we must use the image of a net. Imagine the whole universe as an immense net, and each being as a single knot in this net. If we disturb one knot, the whole net is shaken. So each individual must be happy to keep the world happy. From the lessons of life, it is clear that real victory is never gained by strife. Success is never achieved by conflict. Happiness is never experienced through ill feeling. Peace is never achieved by accumulating more wealth or gaining worldly power. Peace is gained only by letting go of our selfishness and helping the world with acts of love. Peace in the heart conquers all opposing forces. It also helps us maintain a healthy mind and live a rich and fulfilling life of happiness and contentment. Since it is in the minds of men that wars are fought, it is in the minds of men that the fortresses of peace must be built. Sensual pleasures. Today, especially in many so-called affluent societies, people are facing more problems, dissatisfaction, and mental derangement than in underdeveloped societies. This is because men have become slaves to their sensual pleasures and crave for worldly enjoyment without proper moral and spiritual development. Their tensions, fears, anxieties, and insecurity disturb their minds. This state of affairs has become the biggest problem in many countries. Since people in developed societies have not learned to maintain contentment in their lives, hence naturally they will experience unsatisfactoriness. There are 4 areas where man is trying to find out the aim of life: material or physical level, likes and dislikes or pleasant and unpleasant feeling, studying and reasoning, sympathetic understanding based on pure justice and fair dealing. The last one is the realistic and lasting method which never creates disappointment. Today, people need more wealth, not only for their living, and to fulfill their obligations, but because their craving for accumulation has increased. It has become a sort of competition. To experience worldly pleasure, there must be an external object or partner, but to gain mental happiness, it is not necessary to have such an external object. Many young people have lost confidence in themselves and have to face difficulty in deciding what to do with their lives. The main cause of this mental attitude is excessive ambition and anxieties created by competition, jealousy, and insecurity. Such problems naturally create a very bad atmosphere for others who want to live peacefully. It is a fact that when one individual creates a problem, his behavior in turn affects the well-being of others. Animals never experience happiness but pleasure. Happiness is not based on the arbitrary satisfaction of one's own self, but in the sacrifice of one's pleasure for the well-being of others. Using wealth properly. To most people, a wealthy person, community, or nation is one that is rich, in the sense of possessing assets or money, which constitute material gain. The word wealth originally meant state of well-being, will. The word commonwealth carries this meaning, but it is now used to refer to property which generally promotes material well-being rather than the mental state of being well. Of course, we cannot deny that desire for wealth is a valuable adjunct to success if held within proper bounds. Desire, in itself, is not evil. Unrestrained, however, desire leads to restless discontentment, envy, greed, fear, and cruelty to fellow beings. The accumulation of money may aid in the achievement of a kind of happiness to some extent, but does not in itself bring total satisfaction. Where most men of vast means fail is when they confuse the means with the end. They do not understand the nature, meaning, and proper function of wealth, that it is merely a means by which one can gain the end of supreme happiness. But one can be happy without being rich. An old Chinese tale will illustrate this. Once there was a king who wanted to know how to be truly happy. One of his ministers advised him that to be happy, he would have to wear the shirt of a man who was truly happy. After a long time, he found such a man, but the happy man had no shirt to give the king. That was why he was happy. Wealth should be used well and wisely. It should be used for one's welfare as well as that of others. If a person spends his time clinging to his property without fulfilling his obligations towards his country, people, and religion, he will lead an empty life, plagued with worries. Too many people are obsessed with material gain to the point that they forget their responsibilities to their families and fellow beings. Happiness is a strange thing. The more you share it, the more you get satisfaction. If one is selfish, when the time comes for one to leave this world, one will realize too late that one had not made full use of his or her wealth. No one, even a wealthy person, will have really benefited from the riches so painstakingly accumulated. Accumulation of wealth. Some people think that by accumulating more and more wealth, they can overcome their problems. So they try to become very rich by working hard, but after becoming billionaires, they have to face many more unexpected problems. Insecurity, unrest, enemies, and difficulty in maintaining their wealth. This clearly shows that the accumulation of wealth alone is not the solution for human problems. Wealth, no doubt, can help to overcome certain problems, but not all the world's happiness can be gained through money. Money cannot eradicate natural problems. Philosophers, great thinkers and rationalists have pointed out the nature of human weaknesses and how to overcome them. However, many people regard them as mere theories and not as solutions to their problems. Sometimes the intellect actually creates more problems because it increases our egoistic opinions about ourselves. The Buddha's advice for earning. Contrary to some misconceptions held by certain quarters that Buddhism, with its spirit of tolerance, and particularly in its practice of meditation, does not encourage its followers to work hard and to be industrious. The Buddha, in his many discourses, in fact strongly encouraged his followers not to be idle and indolent, but to work hard and to be industrious, so as to accumulate wealth through righteous means to maintain economic stability. Whilst encouraging the accumulation of wealth, the Buddha incidentally warned his followers not to violate any ethical or religious principles in so doing. He also advised that man should not become a slave to the mere accumulation of wealth, just for accumulation's sake, but to protect it without neglect and waste. He advised that wealth should serve as an adequate means of livelihood for the family, should be utilized to assist relatives and friends where necessary, and to help the poor and needy as charitable acts. In his discourse on various types of happiness in relation to wealth, the Buddha gave 4 practical classifications of happiness as follows. Happiness in the possession of wealth through righteous and legitimate means. Happiness through the proper and correct usage of accumulated wealth. Happiness in being free from indebtedness to anyone. Happiness in the knowledge that no illicit or illegitimate means had been employed in the course of accumulating wealth, and that no one had been harmed or injured in so doing. Man's place on this planet. From the Buddhist point of view, man is different from animals because only he alone has developed his intelligence and understanding to reflect his reasoning. Man means one who has a mind to think. The purpose of religion is to help man to think correctly, to raise him above the level of the animal, to help him understand his relationship with his universe and live in harmony with it, so that he reaches his ultimate goal of supreme happiness and fulfillment. The 3 questions which have baffled man ever since he was able to satisfy his 3 basic survival needs of food, shelter, and procreation are: who am I? What am I doing here? Am I needed? Throughout the history of man, many thought systems have evolved, with religion being foremost among them. To provide answers to these questions, naturally, since man asked them in the first place, the answers were all seen from the point of view of man himself. Man in the universe. Long ago, man had seen himself as being in the center of the universe, as its most important inhabitant. According to this point of view, the world was made for humans, for themselves to obtain from it what they wanted, because they were the most favored creatures on it, and everything that existed on this planet was for their sole pleasure. This so-called humanistic view may be directly responsible for the terrible rape of our planet and our total disregard for the rights of other beings which coexist with us. For example, there have been tragic cases where certain species of animals became extinct through needless slaughter by unsympathetic humans in the pursuit of their sporting pleasure or business purposes. Even today, the subjugation of nature by science and technology is being applauded. We must increase the number of those amongst us who have already realized the vast destruction that has been wreaked by man in the name of progress. Up until now, nature has been most forgiving, and it has allowed man to continue to think that this planet was made for him to rape and plunder at will, to satisfy his insatiable greed for material possessions and sensual gratification. Today, there are many warning signs to indicate that the comfortable times are about to end. Hopefully, if compassion and right view will not save the world, then at least the same selfishness and desire for self-preservation and self-gratification will force man to give some sensible thought to our impoverished environment and our suffering fellow creatures on this earth. To understand the place of man in the universe from a Buddhist point of view, we must first of all look at Buddha's view on the cosmos. According to him, the universe is to be understood in terms of a vast cosmic space. His teaching categorized the whole universe into three groups: planets with living beings, planets with elements, and only space itself. We can see man as a specially favored creature that had come into existence to enjoy the pleasures of a specially formed planet at the center of the universe. Buddhism views man as a tiny being, not only in strength, but also in lifespan. Man is no more than just another creature, but with intelligence that inhabits the universe. Biologically, humans are weaker than any other beings, big or small. Other animals are born armed with some sort of weapon for their own protection and survival. Humans, on the other hand, have their mind for everything, but not as a weapon. Humans are regarded as cultured living beings because they are to harmonize with others, but not to destroy them. Religion was discovered by them for this purpose. Everything that lives share the same life force which energizes man. They are part of the same cosmic energy which takes various forms during endless rebirths, passing from human to animal to divine form and back again. Motivated by the powerful craving for existence, the survival instinct, which takes them from birth to death and to rebirth again in a never-ending cycle called samsara. The three detrimental sources of man which bind him to samsara are greed, hatred, and delusion. This cycle can only be broken irrevocably through the development of wisdom which destroy these fetters and put an end to craving. Our shared fate as beings who inhabit this planet is that we all want desperately to go on living. All tremble at the rod, all fear death. Knowing this, one should neither strike nor cause to strike. Dhammapada. All things depend on each other for their existence. A man cannot see himself as different from, let alone being superior to, other beings, because his body is solely dependent on food, which means he is dependent on plants, water, oxygen, etc. for his existence. At the same time, his mind also exists dependently because the existence of thoughts rely on sense data, which are derived from the external world of objects and persons. The whole universe must be seen as an immense net. If only one knot in it is shaken, the whole net vibrates. Man owes allegiance to the world because he is dependent on it for his existence, both physically and mentally. His attitude towards the world should therefore not be the arrogance of a pampered only child, but one of humility. The world was not made for him alone, nor is the world always made out in his favor. Worldly conditions have no favoritism. They are neither kind nor cruel, but neutral. Man exists because the rest of the world allows him to do so. Therefore, he should not try to squeeze things out from the world only for his own benefit. He must maintain a sense of awe and respect towards nature and all beings. Man is a relative newcomer to the planet Earth. He must learn to respect his other brethren. He must learn to behave more like a guest rather than a player in a card game where the winner takes all. It was in recognition of this interdependence that the Buddha advised his followers to practice metta, loving kindness, to all, to radiate that compassion towards all beings. The Buddha does not mean that men should extend their love to fellow human beings only. He certainly does not recommend special treatment for their fellow Buddhists. Whenever he talks about loving others, he always speaks of all beings, sabbe satta. Even those lacking material form, the conscious, the superconscious. 3 modes of birth. Living beings are those that are moisture-born, egg-born, womb-born, and those spontaneously arising in other planes of existence. Clearly, the Buddha was teaching that if a man is to live on this planet, he must develop an attitude of loving kindness towards not only fellow human beings, but all beings that inhabit this planet, as well as in other planes of existence. Only then can he vanquish the selfish thoughts which places needs and survival above the needs of all others. In Buddhist cosmology, man is simply the inhabitant of one of the existing planes one can go to after death. These range from superconscious levels through the highly sensuous down to the 4 unhappy states. Man occupies a midway position in these realms. The so-called divine realms are a happy state, but they too are impermanent. Although there are indications to lead us to believe that some intelligent living beings do exist in other world systems, it is not verifiable whether there are beings similar to humans in other planets of the universe. It is in terms of this infinite vast cosmic context that Buddhism tries to understand the place of man in the universe. In terms of that context, man seems to be small. We must add to this man's propensity for cruelty, for his ability to inflict pain on others, which makes him at times far less admirable than animals which only attack to satisfy their basic need for food, shelter, or sex. Man's unique position. One might argue that this is a very negative view of man, relegating him to an inferior position and disregarding his magnificent achievements in philosophy, religion, psychology, science, the arts, architecture, literature, and development of culture and the like. Far from it. In this cosmic context, humans assume a unique position because they have the most rare privilege of easy accessibility to salvation. It is for these 3 reasons. Human world is a good, well-balanced mixture of pleasure and pain. When pleasure is intensified in the divine realms, or pain is predominant in the lower worlds, one's mind does not turn towards spirituality. Buddhists maintain that extreme austerity or extreme self-indulgence are not conducive to the development of wisdom and understanding. The middle path between extreme pleasure and austerity is advocated, and the human world provides man the opportunity to tread the middle path. The second reason is the relative short span of human life and the unpredictability of the time of death. Faced with imminent death, one is more often inclined towards spirituality. The third reason is that while in other realms the inhabitants are mere passive recipients of the effects of their past karma, man is in a favorable position to create fresh karma, and is thus able to shape his own destiny. All of this gives man the responsibility to work out his own salvation in the human plane. He is, in effect, his own creator and savior. Many others believe that religion has come down from heaven, but Buddhists know that Buddhism started on the earth and reached heaven. What this implies is that each man has within him the Buddha seed, potential for perfection, which he can develop without any external aid. One can become a Buddha through birth in the human plane, because it is there that he can experience existence in its entirety. Buddhists would certainly agree with Shakespeare's view of the human paradox. What a piece of work is man! How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? In many ways, man is ignorant, yet he has the seed to become the highest of all beings, a fully enlightened one. Some people say that human life is between heaven and hell, because the human mind can be developed easily to experience heavenly bliss, and when it is abused, it could very easily experience suffering in hell. Man is man only if he has that human concern or human-heartedness. Proud man hath no heaven, the envious man hath no neighbor, an angry man hath not even himself. Chinese philosophy. The individual by himself is helpless. Hence, the social life of man which brings forth cooperative power. Man cannot be man without society. Man is one with nature. Greek philosopher. In the teaching of the Buddha, it is mentioned that human beings experience heavenly bliss when the objects impinging on the five senses are favorable and soothing. On the other hand, they also experience suffering like in hell if the objects are irritable and disturbing.